Hey, I'm back. I'm doing a little bit different of a video today. I had an individual who wanted to know more about the NRATINGS program for NASCAR Racing 2003. So I thought I would do a little tutorial. This is my first tutorial, so I'll see how it goes. Basically, for the NRATINGS program, what is it? Well, what it does is you can make mass edits to the drivers, the AI drivers in NASCAR Racing 2003, or you can change individual items for single drivers. So I'll get into this and kind of show you how it works and how I came up with the way that I do it. So I wanted to show you this first. This right here, and I'll put a link in the description, is basically the information that I have received on the internet about what the ratings do, what they're all about, and how you should use them. And also the NRATINGS program itself. Basically, you install the program, you tell it where your NASCAR Racing 2003 season directory is. So I've already done that here. And then you choose the mod. It's going to look for the mod automatically that you have. Once you put in the mod, then all the names will show up. If you have a specific roster within that mod that you use, like for my series, I use the All-Star roster. So I click All-Star, and now these are all the drivers in my All-Star lineup. You can see on the right-hand side, it has all the ratings for each driver. So if I click Tony Stewart, his ratings are going to change, and they'll be different than William Byron. There are some drivers that are close to the same in ratings. Kind of how I do it overall is I take the top drivers and I make their ratings the highest, of course, based on a few different things. I'll look at stats online. For example, Dale Earnhardt. How good of a road course racer was he? Well, I'll look at stats online to show me typically how well he did on a road course, and then I'll make my determination on how I want his rating to look for those types of tracks. Short tracks, same thing. Speedways and super speedways. So let's get into the ratings and see what they're all about. So for aggression, you can look at it. This says not a huge effect was noted for aggression. This individual did lots of different tests. He went from 100 down to 1, tested this many times, and came out with the information that he did. There's a couple of factors in here that are pretty big for most tracks, and we'll go through those. Consistency hasn't really been tested a whole lot. In the tutorial that he did, it said anything below 50 causes wrecks at plate tracks. I find that if you, in any of these ratings, you want to have the rating at 50 or above, because if it's below 50, the AI can get confused and issues can happen. Finishing the race. No effects from a 4-car comparison 100 down to 1. So at the end of the day, finishing, does it really have a big difference? Does it make a big difference? Not sure. Qualifying. This one says it takes a number of tenths off the pace from 1 to 100. So basically with qualifying, if you put it at 1, they're probably not going to qualify as well. If you put it at 100, they're going to qualify really well. And there's variances, as you can see here. There's a minimum and a maximum. So if you want more of a dice roll, let's say you're going to Kansas and cars are going to qualify. If you want all the cars to, if you want the driver to qualify at their best, obviously you would put it at 99 and 99. I don't use 100 either, because that can cause problems if you put it at 100. If you want there to be a variable, then you can put it at, like I have here, 83 and 90. That way when the track loads, it's going to choose what number that AI driver is going to have for that race. So let's look at Kevin Harvick. He can have anything from an 83 to a 90. If you load one track, he might get an 83. If you load the next track, he might be a 90. It's all a dice roll. If you want it to be the same every single time, then you would put qualifying for Harvick at 90 and 90, and he would always be at a 90 when he went to qualify, no matter what track it's at. Qualifying is for every track in the game. Now again, for road courses, this is going to be what the variation is. Basically, I look at it as, on a road course, how well do I want a driver to perform? A driver like Jeff Gordon is known to be good on a road course, so I'm going to make his rating inevitably higher than someone who's typically not very good on a road course. So I'll give you an idea. Let's see, Jeff Gordon. Where's Jeff Gordon at on here? Typically on a road course, I have Jeff Gordon anywhere from a 90 to a 95. So when that track loads, when that road course loads, it's going to look at, he's a 90 to a 95, and the computer is going to pick a number for him. Let's say it picks 93. He's going to be at a 93 on a road course for that race, and that plays part of a role in the overall picture. Now, if you have him as a driver at a 93, he's going to hit his marks and do what he needs to do. But if you have the vehicle engine at a low rate, then he's going to be slow because the engine's not up to snuff and it's not going to perform very well. The car, let's look at this. The aerodynamics, that plays a huge role in a lot of the NASCAR Racing 2003 game. For short tracks, obviously, aerodynamics doesn't make that big of a difference because you're not going 200 miles an hour, so aerodynamics isn't a key factor at a short track. It can be a key factor at Watkins Glen. It's a road course, but it's also a fast road course, so it can make a difference. Where it's going to make a big difference, obviously, is at the super speedways, the speedways and super speedways like Kansas, Michigan, 1.5 miles, 2 mile tracks, Indianapolis, Talladega, and Daytona. So aerodynamics is going to make a big difference. Let's see what else we have. The chassis, it can make a big difference as well. You can see here it says cost 0.8 of a second per lap at Bristol on 1, a rating of 1 compared to 100. And it can make a difference of 1.2 seconds per lap at Atlanta versus 0.1 at Daytona. So you'll find the chassis makes a big difference at some tracks, but not at other tracks. And the engine is the same. 1, if you have your rating at 1, it's going to be 0.2 seconds per lap at Bristol. You're going to be 0.2 seconds different. And then if it's at 100, not that much of a difference. At Daytona, it's going to be anywhere from 0.5 seconds a lap at Atlanta and 2 seconds a lap at Daytona. So the engine is a huge factor. So it breaks down like this. If you're at Daytona and you pick your engine as a 1 on the rating, you're going to be 2 seconds a lap slower than someone who has chosen 100 for their engine rating, if that makes sense. If you're at Atlanta, if you put your engine on a 1, you're going to be half a second slower than another car that's at 100. Reliability. I haven't seen much difference with this either. You can put reliability at 1 and put it at 100. I haven't seen a whole lot of difference. I don't know what the end effect at the end of the day is for that. Pit road consistency. Now this is one that affects you as a human player and affects the AI. If you have anything below 50, it can cause some issues, so I would at least keep it above 50. You can look at my pit crew ratings. My ratings for every driver in the entire field are exactly the same. Consistency is 80, 100. Speed is 50 and 60 because the speed of the AI pit crews are fast. So if you have them at 80, 90, they're going to be faster than you on a pit stop. You need to put the pit crew speed at 50 to 60 so they match your pit crew, and that'll keep it consistent. That'll keep everybody with the same speed. Strategy. So you can see here strategy is from 85 to 90, 85 to 98. So it's kind of like this is the strategy for the AI. You know what you're going to do when you come into pit, but the AI has to make a decision. If you put it on 100, they might run out of fuel because they're trying to be as strategic as possible and try to stretch it to the last second. So the highest I would go is probably 98 on strategy. That way they don't try to go one extra lap and run out of fuel. See, and consistency is the AI ability to run laps and not make mistakes. So driver consistency. How consistent is the driver? Are they going to run the same lap times every single time? Or are they going to make mistakes? So how consistent are they at the end of the day? Again, the engine plays a big role. I have found if you want backmarker drivers, slower drivers, to be slower drivers, then you turn down their engine. Let's look at a driver like Davey Allison. His engine is 90 to 95, and I don't know why that reliability is like it is. I think that was meant more for me, and I changed it for him accidentally. I'll show you how to change that back. But his reliability, or his engine, is 90-95. Now let's look at someone like Jeffrey Earnhardt. His engine is 75-95. So for the most part, when that track loads in, Jeffrey Earnhardt's going to have an engine that's not as good as Davey Allison. Because this is 90 to 95. That's the only parameters that the computer can pick from. So they have to choose something between 90 to 95. For Alex Bowman, I put 90 to 95 for the engine too because he's with Hendrick, and Hendrick has really good engines. But for someone like David Reagan, I put his engine anywhere from 75 to 95 because typically his car isn't as fast as other cars on the track. And I don't know why this changed the reliability for everybody. That's something I just noticed, so I'm going to go in and fix that myself. And I'll actually show you how to do that in just a minute. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. You can see here for the driver, this is how well they race. Like on a short track, it's how well they race. And for someone like Jeffrey Earnhardt, he's new. He's not a Hall of Fame driver. He's not a great driver. So he gets a 58 to 68 on the short tracks, on all the types of speedways and super speedways and road courses. He's a lower tier driver. He's going to have lower ratings. And also his car isn't going to be as good either. His aerodynamics are going to be lower. His chassis will be lower. His engine isn't as good. And reliability I need to fix. But one thing I keep the same for everybody is the pit crew. I keep that the same across the board. That way it's fair. There's still some ratings dice roll that happens, but for the most part, it's pretty fair for everyone involved. So I hope that gives you some idea of what the ratings are all about. You can do more research on that and see what works best for you, but typically I find if you want a driver to go faster, you make their engine better. If you want them to go slower, you make their engine slower. The two biggest things are engine number 1 and aerodynamics are number 2. And then for the driver ratings, this is how well you want them to perform at each track, or do they have the chances of making a mistake. If you make their ratings lower, they have more chance of missing their corner or not braking correctly or just being slower, getting out of the groove, making a mistake. But if their ratings are 90 or above, they're pretty much going to run Hall of Fame laps every single time. They're not going to make a mistake. So let's go in and see how to change some of these ratings. You can look at reliability here. I need to change this for all drivers. And I think I'm going to put it somewhere around 70 to 93. just because sometimes cars still do blow engines, they have oil leaks, things still happen. If you put every car at 95, 95, nobody's ever going to have any type of issues at all. So let's go in and see how to modify those. What we're going to do is we're going to select bulk modify ratings. We're going to click that button and this is going to come up. You're going to unselect all because you don't want to change everything. You just want to change the reliability. So you're going to click vehicle reliability. That's the one we want to change. Right now we're going to do minimum only because we're going to change that number for every driver. And we're going to select the cars you want to change. We're going to select all. We want to change everybody in here. Select the action to perform. Set to value. Now you're going to tell it the minimum value to set it to. And we're going to choose 70 for our minimum value. We're going to hit apply. Now you can see all the lines just changed to blue. That means something happened. Now we're going to change it to max. And we're going to set the value to 93. And we're going to hit apply. And now we're going to hit close. And then we need to do one more thing. We need to hit save modify changes. And it's going to ask you, do you want to change it? Because you can't reverse it if you do. So I'm going to hit yes. And it's going to go through every car. And it's going to change that single thing for every car. Nothing else got changed except for vehicle reliability. Now every single car has the same reliability for all of them. So as I'm scrolling through here, the reliability is not changing because it's the same for everyone and it's saved. And when you go into the game and look at a single driver rating, you're going to see exactly what you see on the screen here. It's going to look the same. The only other way to do it is to go into the game and go into opponent info and change it manually. This option right here lets you change things for everyone. How long would it take you to change the reliability for every single driver in the game if you had to do it one at a time? This gives you the opportunity to change it for multiple people at the same time in just a few seconds. So that's what I like about it. So at the end of the day, I know I've been kind of long-winded here. Driver ratings, I'll put a link in the description for a website to go to look at stats, and then you can take those stats and figure out what driver ratings you want. The way I do it, I'll say, okay, how did Rusty Wallace perform at speedways over his career? And then I'll come up with a number. And then I'll say, okay, how did Cale Yarborough perform at speedways? How did Kyle Larson perform at a road course? His numbers typically aren't very good at road courses, so he got a lower number. He got lower scores. Usually for the highest ratings, let's look at Dale Earnhardt. He'll get 90 to 95 because he was very good at those types of tracks. He typically wasn't very good at road courses, so he got an 82 to a 92. Same thing for Kevin Harvick. Typically over his career, he's not as good at short tracks, so his numbers aren't as high. So I'll go anywhere from 90 to 95 for Hall of Fame drivers in a certain area. And then I'll go, if they were pretty good, like Dale Earnhardt Jr. was pretty good at speedways like Kansas, Michigan, mile and a halves. So I gave him 75 to 85. So when he goes to a speedway, the best he's going to be is an 85 at a speedway. When someone like Dale Earnhardt Sr., the worst he's going to be is a 90 at a speedway. But again, these vehicle options down here, aerodynamics and engine, they do play a role. So you'll have to judge that with what you feel is best. So what I can do is go through these just one at a time, and if you need to pause the video, you can pause it just to see what I have rated my drivers at. Typically a driver like Terry Labonte is going to have a little bit higher ratings. You can see at speedways and super speedways, he wasn't the greatest, so I didn't put his numbers very high. So I'll go through a few of these, and I'll even look at drivers like Ryan Blaney And then we'll look at someone like William Byron, who's just starting out his career. See, he has good numbers because he's with Hendrick. But what about him as a driver? He's just starting out, so he's not going to have the greatest numbers. He's not a Hall of Fame driver, so he doesn't get those 90 to 95 scores. Davey Allison gets higher scores, but someone like Jeffrey Earnhardt, he gets lower scores here because he hasn't proven himself, and he gets lower vehicle scores because he's not part of Hendrick. He's not part of Joe Gibbs. He's not part of a big racing team, so he doesn't have all that information. I have to take that into account. But the one thing they all have in common is they all have pit crews, so I leave their numbers pretty much the same. So I would set your numbers right here and not change them. That way that's taken care of. But you have to figure out how fast you want your drivers to be, how good do you want their vehicles to be, and how good do you want them to be as a driver under the driver ratings. I hope that helped you out some. If you have more questions, let me know, and have a good day.